Good morning, everybody. This is Danny from Deep South Homestead. We're out here at our fig tree this morning. The weather has finally got conducive for us to be able to harvest figs. The tree has finally got some getting ready. It's right on schedule because usually the 1st of July we start to get figs. Last year we got absolutely none. It was a bad year. We got a late freeze and it killed all the figs on the tree. This year we have literally got a bumper crop started. Well, along with the bumper crop of figs comes a bumper crop of birds and other animals, rats, coons, possums. You know, now that Hank has run away, we don't have a dog here by the fig tree, and we're having, you know, issues with all types of animals. We have traps set, so hopefully we're going to be able to catch anything that's messing with them. So far, it's just been birds. We haven't had any rat problem, we haven't had any coon or possum, but we anticipate it. We had stuck an owl in here because we thought that we had this battery-powered owl that's supposed to hoot and all that if something moved around it. Well, we learned when we put it in the tree that when the wind blows, it just starts hooting. So that part really wasn't doing any good. But then we noticed that the birds just kept coming to the tree, and I was like, what is going on? So I come out here. Well, Mr. Owl had lost his head. Something happened, the wind sloshed him around in the tree, done something, and it broke his head off and it fell on the ground. So I was guessing that the reason the birds weren't scared of the owl because he didn't have a head to eat them with or something. I don't know, but regardless of that, the fig is a very, it's a staple tree for us here at Deep South Homestead. We can the figs whole. A lot of people make preserves and all kind of, we have some of those because we've made them in the years past, but we mainly can them whole now because that's the way I found that they are most beneficial to me when I eat breakfast in the morning. But the fig is actually a staple tree. It's originally from the Mediterranean area over in the Middle East. It was a staple over there. It can withstand a good bit of heat and drought and stuff like that. Not really picky about its soil type, although it does like a well-drained, rich soil. It does better in that. Now this particular tree here is a brown turkey. This one is probably, oh my gosh, I wouldn't hesitate to say it's 20 years old. I mean, it's getting to be pretty old, and I keep the top cut down, but the sides are probably, I don't know, it's probably 20 feet across maybe or more, because that way I can get to the figs. The tree, my grandpa taught me how to prune it up so I can actually get up in it and climb around and get the figs out of it. When you're fooling with figs, some people can mess with them and some can't. Now, if you come out here and it's rainy and it's wet, like early in the mornings, we have to do it early in the morning, and it doesn't bother me that bad, but Wanda, it really itches her and breaks her out pretty bad. There is a white substance that comes out of the fig, gets on your hands. It's a latex type substance. Some people is allergic to it. I'm not. It does itch my fingers a little bit. I've actually seen it split people's hands and swell them all up bad and all if they pick them when it's wet. But you want to try to wait till the fig is fully mature. That way it's not so full of the substance. Now, okay, we have here 2 figs. Now one, the substance I'm talking about, when we can these whole, we have to break that tip off like that. And I want you to see the difference here now. There's a latex substance. I'm gonna try to see if I can get it out on my finger. See that latex substance on my finger there? It's a liquidy substance. Now this one is not quite as ripe. It may be a little bit better at it. Let's see here. That right there is what is toxic to some people. If you was to eat these 2 figs right here in their stage right now, what will happen is you'll start getting what they call a burning mouth. The latex will actually burn your lips a little bit, especially if you're more allergic to it. The more allergic you are to it, the worse it's going to burn. So we try to, I mean, you can actually, like you can see it dripping off of them, literally. If you pick them like this, now this is actually, at this stage, is probably the best stage for canning them whole because they don't just fall all to pieces in the jar. They remain whole. Now some people don't take the stems off, I do. But that's the actual best stage for canning them whole. What you can do is you can let them lay out for about a day at room temperature, and they will continue to ripen, and they'll get really soft, and a lot of the latex will dry up and go away in them, and then they're pretty edible. Now these are a little bit firm. That's what I want whenever I put them in jars, but you know, you can't have them all firm. So we'll go over the tree and we pick, and the ones that are really overripe, those are the ones that we eat fresh. Now when I eat a fig fresh, I will grab it by the end and hold it by the stem, and I'll bite it right in the top and kind of let the peel out from around it. That way it doesn't seem to bother my lips as much by letting the peeling come off of it. It's when you eat the peeling with it that you end up getting the burning mouth sensation. Now there is this ongoing thing that you're eating dead wasps when you eat a fig, because the way figs are pollinated is the male wasp, you know, and the female wasp, they're the end of this. This is technically just a flower. They go down into the end of it and go down inside there, and the female, when she goes in to lay her eggs, her wings are broken off and she basically dies inside here. She lays her eggs and she dies inside the fig. And a lot of people won't eat figs because they're like, oh my God, I'm eating dead wasps. Well, the latex substance in there really has a unique ability about it. It actually dissolves the whole wasp if it happens to be in there. Man, and I don't worry about that, to be honest with you. But I want to try to show you. Okay, when I open this fig up, you can see the inside of it's just little flowerets. That's basically all that it is. It's just a flower that doesn't open. It leaves its blooms on the inside, and the insect goes in there to actually pollinate it on the inside of the fig. Now, there is no wasp inside this fig. Nothing to be concerned about. I'm not worried about it. It's actually a good fig. There are actually many different varieties of figs. We have several here on our place. I have this is the brown turkey. I have propagated it. I have several other brown turkey figs on the property that are small. I actually have an LSU fig over here on the back side of the property that we planted this year. It's a big purple fig. And I have a fig tree here. We call it the grandpa fig. It was a fig that my grandfather's father had. It was said in our family that it was an original tree that came from China way back yonder in our family, and it's been kept. And I have this fig. I don't know the name of it. I don't know anything about it other than it makes a huge fig. It gets as big as a tennis ball a lot of times, and it's very sweet. And my grandfather would chop your hands off if he caught one of his kids or grandkids near that tree. We were not permitted to go anywhere close to that tree because that tree was a special tree to my grandfather. Well, upon his death, my grandmother called me and asked me, did I want that tree? Of course, it was a nice sized tree, and I told her, I says, Grandma, I can't dig that big tree up, you know. And she said, yes, son, yes, you can. She said, just bring you a chainsaw over here. And I took a chainsaw over and I cut that whole tree off about a foot off the ground. And it took me a while, but I took a shovel and I dug around that tree and got a big, huge stump. And I brought it home with me some 25, 30 years ago. And I planted it in the ground. Well, only one little tiny sprout come up out of the ground from it. And the rest of the tree actually died because it was the wrong time of the year. I didn't know anything about trees at that time. And I was able to save that one little sprout off of it. And since then, I have been able to keep the tree going. And it has been a blessing to us. So there are lots of different kinds of figs. There's mission figs. I mean, there's all kinds of them. There's the big orange figs, yellow figs, green figs. But guys, they have a high nutritional value. They're very loaded with sugar. That's one thing about them. They're a sugar substitute for a lot of people. And in the Middle East, they're a staple because of their content. Now, they're probably one of the oldest known fruit trees that we actually have, other than, I mean, I think it probably is the oldest known fruit tree, because in the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible, it's said that they sewed fig leaves together for covering once they sinned in the garden. And I can't believe that's the same kind of fig we have here, because if you take that fig leaf right there and put it against your skin, that fig has a velvety back on it that's itchy. And I don't think that, I'll just be honest with you, I don't think Adam and Eve could have made a clothing out of figs leaves. And you know, I know that in the Garden of Eden the leaves were probably a lot bigger because there were no sin in the garden. And the leaf might have been even more pure, I don't know. But it had to be somewhat different than what we have here. But nevertheless, this tree was mentioned in ancient times. Since the beginning of what we call time, as far as man is known, this tree has been cultivated. It has been around. It has been talked about by many world leaders and stuff. You know, there's all kinds of stories about fig trees to be read. So you might want to check that out. But guys, the edible fig is so nutritious for us to have. Not only is it just nutritious, it's actually used in coffees. Now the Ticino coffee that we use here at Deep South Homestead, I used it back when my first wife had cancer. She couldn't drink regular coffee. So we found this Ticino coffee from the Mediterranean, and it had figs in it. It was made with figs and dates and things like that. It had no real coffee in it whatsoever, but it made a good coffee. And Wanda today, even, she drinks the Ticino. She has different flavors that she likes because it's a very alkalinizing coffee. Because of the fruits and the nuts and all that's used in it, to make the coffee, it has more of an alkalinizing effect on the system rather than an acidifying effect on the system. So you might want to check out, as Wanda has links to Ticino coffee, you might want to check that out because it's really nutritious if you're trying to get away from all the nervousness and the shaking that you get from coffee from the caffeine, because this is actually a decaffeinated type coffee. It doesn't have any caffeine in it. It's called no calf, not decaf coffee. But anyway, we got to get here and get these figs picked before the birds get in here. And I got a lot of other things to do before the sun starts coming up, because today, guys, the heat index is supposed to be 104. Yesterday it was 104. So we're hoping to be able to get some things done today before the heat index actually runs us. That's what's pushing these figs. All of a sudden, the temperature has just got screaming hot. So check out the figs. Grow you one. People say they can't be grown up north. Yes, they can. Put them in a container. A fig will grow to the size of the container, or you can prune it to the size of the container. Figs come on new growth every year, so prune it back, and when the new growth comes out, you'll have figs. Keep it inside next to a windowsill, keep it in a garage, keep it in a basement during the winter. Whatever you need to do, you can grow figs up north. And one thing I might want to add, if you're in the southern area, I'm going to say zone 7 and down, you can have fig trees. You might even have them in 6 down. The reason most people can't grow a fig is that fig trees, their roots grow mainly on top of the ground. Now they have a tap root that goes down, but most of the roots lay right on the surface, within the top 4 inches of the surface. And what happens is, when the soil dries out or the ground freezes, the tree dies. They had an old saying here in the Deep South that when an old person died from around the house, the fig tree died with it later. And that was just simply because there was no maintenance and no care to the tree. And what you need to do in order to have a successful fig tree is you need at least 4 to 6 inches of mulch on top of the roots around the bottom of this tree. Now what we do here is every fall, I have a bunch of oak trees around me here. All the oak leaves fall here in the backyard. We rake all these oak leaves up and we pile them all around the limb span of this tree up under it, 4 to 6 inches deep. And in the spring we turn the chickens loose, and we let the chickens get in all the leaves, and they scratch around, and they use the bathroom in it, and get all the bugs out and stuff like that. And then we pin the chickens away from the fig tree, and we pile it back up, and we leave it. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful thing for us to have here in the Deep South, and our trees have grown immensely because of it. So, guys, this thing has gotten so sticky, me holding it here in my hands, because of the latex. Okay guys, up under my fig tree here, a lot of times I'll let the sprouts come back out, and what I'll do is I will dig them up right at the edge of the tree and I'll propagate them from that point forward. As you can see, these little trees I have here on it, they have figs on them up here in the top. They grow figs really quick. And I'll dig these trees up and, you know, we'll root them in something, and because figs root really easy. And we'll move them around to different places on the property. You see like that Y crotch right there I have right at the ground. I have a place right there. And over here I have these limbs like that. The way I have the tree done here with big limbs right at the ground. My limbs are not way up in the tree. I actually done that pretty close to the ground. And the reason I did that is because when I need to get up in the tree, my grandpa told me, he said, you need to make your tree like a ladder so that when you can just step your foot in that crotch, you can just step up in the tree. And when you're up in the tree, it gives you access to be able to get to all these figs that get ripe. Now, I realize when I get older, I probably won't be able to do this, but right now, it's an easy way for me to be able to get up in here and harvest figs. Plus, I keep this top cut out right up here. As you can see, I'll pull a piece out. There's where I cut it off last year. The old dead stob's still up there. And actually, if you'll do that and leave a stick sticking up in the middle, it's actually a good place if you have a hollow owl. You can stick the owl down on top of it, and it helps to alleviate some of the bird problems that's in it anyway. But I'm able to sit here, I can reach out, I can harvest my figs without too much trouble. Okay guys, we've picked about half a gallon here, and you know, it's not a lot at this one particular time because the tree is just now starting to actually get ripe. And there's a lot of things you can do with these. Now, we freeze them when they're like this. We destem them and we freeze them in gallon bags in the freezer, and then when Ms. Wanda can take them out and she can can them, they can be dehydrated. You can dehydrate the fig, and it actually becomes more nutritious once it's dehydrated. And it can be rehydrated really easy. You can also make fruit leathers out of them. You can take a dehydrator and make that with it. Ms. Wanda does that. She makes the fig Newtons. We do that with them also. Matter of fact, I think we have a video about the fig Newtons and stuff in our playlist. You'll have to hunt it up. I think every homestead should have fig trees because they are one of the easiest fruits to grow, and they're very nutritious, and they have so many uses that you can use them for on a homestead. They can be canned in many different ways. You can make jams, jellies, preserves, whole figs. Let me tell you, there's nothing no better than a good old cat head biscuit and fig jam on a cold winter's morning, sitting by a fire. Does that get to you or not now? That gets to you, don't it? But anyway, figs are really good for the homestead. So grow you some figs, and I guarantee you, you'll enjoy it. Thank you guys from Deep South Homestead.